conclave, if you will, and they debated and eventually arrived at a decision, and we will get the brackets here momentarily and reveal them to you real time. Mike, I guess coming into some of these storylines that we have to the 2024 playoff field, what stands out to you that are chief among the biggest headlines that we'll be looking for here in moments?
Well, Dan, you said it's the 104th anniversary of KDKA, right? This is the 110th anniversary of the WPIL championships in football. That's right. No, I did not cover that first one back then. But, so 110 years of WPIL championships. But I think the biggest storyline, like you said, in all the other years on this Saturday, teams knew that they were in. And everybody knew if they were in. They didn't know where they were seated. They didn't know who they were playing. Now there are, a dozen or so teams that are sitting on the edge of their seats. It's like NCAA basketball selection Sunday. It's selection Saturday because of the wild cards. These wild card teams do not know if they're in. So they're sitting on the edge of their seats wondering, are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? It adds a new experience to the playoffs this year. Some of the top storylines, I think you got to look at, hey, Aliquippa, could they become one of the select few to win 4 in a row? Could North Allegheny become one of the select few to win 3 in a row in the largest classification? Could Matt Sig win another championship? Then you've got an Elwood City team. They haven't been to the finals since 1944. They finished undefeated for the first time since 44. So those are some of the storylines I think you'll see that are somewhat interesting this year.
Some debate, of course, is going to take place here among football fans across Western Pennsylvania. What do you think the Saturday evening into Sunday morning conversation will be like this year, maybe compared to other years?
Well, I think, again, because of what you said of the WPL selecting the wild card teams, it's opinions now. It's not straight points, tiebreaker points, Gardner points, records. It's opinions. And I think when you bring opinions in, no matter what, that just creates more opinions as far as who should be in and who should not be in.
We do have one programming note to pass along, and it is pertaining to the 1A bracket. Ongoing right now is a game at Riverview High School against Jeanette. That game kicked off at 12 o'clock. That will delay the revelation of the 1A bracket. We may not have it once we leave terrestrial radio at 3 o'clock, but we will remain on the digital channels, watching at YouTube, KDKARadio.com, and our KDKA Radio Facebook page. Once we get that to you, it has not been finalized. We don't have it as we sit here because of the game between Riverview and Jeanette that is ongoing right now. So for those tuning in or watching that are big fans of the 1A playoff field, that will be delayed beyond the first hour of this program, perhaps even into the second hour of the program. So we want to pass along that programming note to you. But if anything should change at the drop of a hat, as we do here at KDKA Radio, breaking news at once. So that programming note and housekeeping item aside, we do want to take a moment right now to thank all of our sponsors and our presenting sponsor, Penn West University. Pennsylvania Western University, we urge you to check out their fall open house, Clarion and Edinburgh campuses coming up on November 9th. You can visit the Cal U campus on November the 16th. Also, we want to thank our sponsors of Home Team Collections, proudly displaying all of your memories with custom jersey and photo framing, hometeamcollections.com, and also all of our friends at Noble Environmental Services, as well as Monticello's Pizza with 6 great locations in the North Hills. Well, stay tuned. Coming up next, we will reveal the brackets starting in the 6A classification, working our way down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and as just mentioned, once we eventually get the 1A bracket, we'll bring that to you hot off the presses. The longtime Post-Gazette sports editor Mike White, Dan Zang, really the play-by-play broadcaster for our KDKA Radio Friday Night Lights Game of the Week. This is Selection Saturday. KDKA Radio and the WPIL bring you one of the most monumental occasions of the high school football season in Western Pennsylvania, and it's all brought to you by Pennsylvania Western University. Good. And I'm not seeing a program feed here. Am I on the monitor?
I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, copy.
I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, we can't. Is the audio live on YouTube? So the audio is live on YouTube. Hello to everybody listening to our conversations on YouTube. Yep. Well, it's been an intense Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon as we are tabulating all the results of the regular season and the Week 9 craziness that was last evening that really did throw a wrench into the entire playoff field. Even the Week 8 results really skewed how these brackets are turning out, and can't wait to reveal them to you here in mere moments, starting with the 6A field. Dan Zhang, really glad to be with you, and Mike White of the Post-Gazette here inside our KDKA Radio TV studios as you watch us on KDKARadio.com, our high school sports YouTube channel, along with the live stream available at KDKA Radio's Facebook page. And you can always get us at 100.1 FM, AM 1020, and on our always free Odyssey app. We do want to take a moment to thank again all of our sponsors, including Penn West University and our friends at Home Team Collections, as well as Monticello's Pizza and Noble Environmental Services. Mike, are you ready?
Dripping with anticipation.
All right, we will begin in the 6A classification, and this is, I guess, Mike, perhaps the most straightforward classification where just 4 teams make it, just to give everybody a quick snapshot as to the ground rules here, and we'll do that with each bracket. As for all of you, you could take a look right now. Only the top 4 teams in the section will qualify. The WPIL championship game will be played at Norwin High School at 6 p.m. So those are the 2 very quick bullet points to catch even the most novice of football fans up to speed. So now let's begin with the 6A bracket, and starting with the 1 seed. No surprise, the Pittsburgh Central Catholic Vikings finishing the year a perfect 6-0 in the 6A field in conference play with an 8-2 record overall, will take on the number 4 seed Seneca Valley Raiders. The Raiders at 3-6 overall and 3-3 in conference play. So that is the 1 versus 4 game. And the number 2 seed, the North Allegheny Tigers, back-to-back defending WPIL champions who dropped their regular season affair to the Vikings, will take on the Mount Lebanon Blue Devils at 3-7, 3-3 overall, though the Blue Devils, Mike, have come on late, and they are heading into the playoffs with a bit of steam.
Well, Dan. Talking about 6A field, always a little real exciting, huh? With only 7 teams, it's, we've said it before, kind of not exciting, this playoff field. And these teams already knew before today. It's already set just by where they finish in the standings. But, it's North Allegheny and Central Catholic again. They've met the championship 3 the last 4 years. The last 2 years, NA1. I think everybody's expecting them to be in the championship again. They're heavy favorites to make it to the finals at Norwin. I don't think North Allegheny is quite the team they were last year, but you never want to vote against an Art Walker team in the playoffs. He's won 7 championships. 7. He's going for number 8, but Central Catholic has the most talent, without a doubt, of anybody in that class.
It's funny, when we look at that game and that matchup, typically the regular season winner has not been able to repeat all but maybe a handful of times in the great head-to-head matchups over the last 20 years between the 2 teams, which is almost split right down the middle. So it's something to watch for as most anticipate that the 1 and 2 seeds, again, Central Catholic is the 1, the North Allegheny Tigers are the 2, and they'll be able to get by their opponents in Seneca Valley and Mount Lebanon respectively to have another rematch in the championship game. All right, so there's another look at that 6A bracket. Again, Central Catholic, the 1, Seneca Valley, the 4. The 2 seed bottom part of the bracket, the North Allegheny Tigers, and the 3 seed goes to the Mount Lebanon Blue Devils, who were able to win big yesterday against the Norwin Knights. And that's brought to you, the 6A bracket, by Monticello's Pizza. Now we move along to the 5A bracket, and there is a big surprise in this 5A bracket. As you take a look at a lot of the debate that was going on, I think, over the course of this conversation, Mike. 5A, you have the Allegheny 6 Conference. You have the Big East Conference. You have Upper St. Clair that finished the year undefeated, right? And then you've got the Pine Richland Rams, perhaps with the highest quality victory against the Central Catholic Vikings. A lot of debate, I think, going back and forth as to who would be the 1 and who would be the 2 seed. So interesting as to what that is going to be revealed here in just a moment.
Well, I think you can make a point for both of them, Dan, to be number one. Seriously. I mean, Upper St. Clair undefeated when at one point they beat 3 undefeated teams in a row in Bethel Park, South Fayette, and Peters Township. Great season. But Pine Richland only has 1 loss, and that was the North Allegheny, the number 2 seed in 6A, and they beat Central Catholic for the second year in a row, the number 1 6A team. So, I honestly, Dan, I think you go either way. I think you can make a point for either of them. A lot of times you go for the undefeated team as the number 1 seed, but I can understand if it was Pine.
It is the Pine Richland Rams as the number 1 seed. Here are here's how the bracket will look. Pine Richland will get one of the very 4 coveted byes. A bit of a surprise, Mike, from your perspective with the Rams getting that 1 seed over USC you just mentioned. You could see it going either way, but now that you see it up there on the screen.
No, I'm really not. If they would have been Upper St. Clair, I'd have been fine with that. And I think that probably the committee really discussed that also, and we'll find out later from Vince Sortino.
The 8 versus 9 game. Pine Richland will await the winner of the North Hills Indians. They are the number 8 seed taking on the number 9 seed Franklin Regional Panthers in that 8-9 game. So the Indians had a terrific year, and the Panthers started strong, and that's going to be a terrific matchup that will be played at Martirelli Stadium Friday night.
Well, North Hills hasn't won a playoff game since 2010. And that was, and Pat Carey hasn't won a playoff game as a coach. 8-9 games are always good in the NCAA tournament, Dan. This one's going to be good in 5A.
A bye awarded to the number 4 seed and conference champions for the first time since 2009, the Woodland Hills Wolverines. They will await the winner of the Bethel Park Blackhawks, the number 5 seed, and the Blackhawks on Friday night will take on number 12 seed Greater Latrobe. Bethel Park losing by 3 points last night to Peters Township, and that, for all intents and purposes, might cost them that bye, the 3-point loss.
Without a doubt, they would have been probably seeded number 3. I think Woodland Hills will be without their quarterback the rest of the season, Cam Walter, but they're still pretty good. Dan, I'm talk about, if we want to talk about it now, I think one of the surprises here, maybe a little bit of a surprise, Latrobe gets a wild card spot. They finished in a tie for 4th place in that conference with Gateway and Kiski area. Now, Latrobe had a decent record, but if you go by the WPIL tiebreaker points, Gateway, Kiski, Latrobe all beat each other, so you can't break it in head-to-head. Tiebreaker points, Gateway would have finished 4th. But guess what? Latrobe got the wild card.
So 3-7 Gateway is left out, and 5-5 Greater Latrobe without Alex Tash, by the way, getting into the postseason for more than half of the season. So a nice push there at the end for the Wildcats.
Yeah, they did. A nice win at Gateway, but Gateway beat Kiski. Kiski beat Latrobe. Without Alex Tash, they are a much different team. I think he was on course to maybe be the player of the year, but they still have a Division I quarterback defensive back in John Wetzel. Bethel better watch. Latrobe, I think, can be a little dangerous, but I still like Bethel.
So with Pine Richland getting the number 1 seed, it is probably of no surprise that the number 2 seed, as we take a look at the other side of the bracket, brought to you by Home Team Collections, the Upper St. Clair Panthers, unbeaten and untied in the toughest conference. Again, it came down to that conversation, which we will ask Chief Operating Officer Vince Sortino about. Was it obviously the biggest quality win for Pine Richland versus the quality of schedule? Upper St. Clair gets the first round bye as the number 2 seed. They will await a very salacious, intriguing matchup. In the 7-10 game, the Penn Hills Indians awarded the number 7 seed, taking on the Moon Tigers out of the Allegheny 6 Conference. That will be played at Penn Hills High School on Friday at 7 o'clock. This is an interesting matchup, Mike, and in fact, we will be there with our KDKA Radio Game of the Week coverage to broadcast that live, bringing you sights and describing the sounds of Indians and Tigers.
Well, I think Penn Hills is playing almost as well as anybody in 5A right now, Dan. They gave Pine Richland a pretty good game, lost to them. But after that shaky start, they've really come on offensively. And then you got Moon, always a dangerous team because of the style they play. Play that power football to try and keep them in the game, control the clock, dangerous team when you play that style in the playoffs.
So, with the victory last night against the Bethel Park Blackhawks, it secured the Peters Township Indians, the WPIAL defending champions in 5A, the number 3 seed. They are awarded that fourth bye, and they await the winner in the bottom half of the bracket in the 6-11 game. The Penn Trafford Warriors, out of the Big East Conference, will take on the South Fayette Lions. South Fayette is able to get in from the Allegheny 6 Conference. Allegheny 6, as we expected, Mike, is well represented in 5A.
Well, the talk all year has been how strong the Allegheny 6 is, and it shows in these brackets. The WPIL took 5 teams from the Allegheny 6. South Fayette, one of the wild card teams, that they get in at the expense of maybe another team. But, their resume was good first half of the year, but they really didn't play anybody. Second half of the year, when they played the tough teams, they struggled some, did not get wins. But, hey, in that conference, a pretty good record, though, gets you in as a wild card.
So 12 playoff spots in the 5A field. 4 byes awarded, just to recap very quickly, going to 1 seed Pine Richland, 2 seed Upper St. Clair, 3 seed Peters Township, and the conference champion Woodland Hills Wolverines for the first time since 2009. And they were awarded 3 at-large wild card bids, going respectfully to South Fayette, Greater Latrobe, and the Moon Tigers on the wild card. Just wanted to make sure that we had all of that right in our housekeeping. So that is the 5A field. It has been set. So now we move along to 4A. Mike, taking a look at these brackets, and oh boy, so stand by. Let's give you the quick set down. Let's take a look at the basically the very easy nuts and bolts, straightforward formation of the 4A classification. So that is going to be a scenario where there are 8 playoff spots that are awarded. There will be no byes in the 4A bracket, and there are 2 at-large wildcard bids by the selection committee. So just, again, go to that slide if you could to give us a shot of, again, 8 wildcard spots, no byes, 2 at-large wildcard bids awarded by the selection committee. So we'll run down the brackets here in just a moment. But it did turn out, Mike, as we're kind of digesting this, and we haven't had a lot of time to do it, but the 4A field is crazy, frankly.
Well, when you see the bracket, yeah, there are definitely some things that need to be answered, some things that maybe make you scratch your head, but it probably makes for a really good playoff. And the reason why there was only 8 teams in 4A, Dan, is because they have to finish a week earlier, along with 6A, in the WPL playoffs, because those WPL champs in 6A and 4A plug into the state quarterfinals, whereas the other 4 classes plug right into the state semifinals. So 4A and 6A has to be done a week earlier. That's why there are only 8 teams in this class, and that's why those 2 games are at Norwin the week before the other 4 classification championships.
At 12 and 6 o'clock on that Saturday afternoon, before we get to Acrisure Stadium again, 8 playoff spots awarded, no byes, 2 at-large wildcard bids by the selection committee. So I believe we are ready to run the 4A field, so let's go ahead and run it down. Because of everything, Mike, last night that happened between Montour and West Allegheny, there was a lot of debate as to who that 1 seed in 4A would be, but it's Thomas Jefferson, because they finish unbeaten and untied. But West Allegheny, with the quality win that they had last night against Montour, they are awarded the 8 seed. How much of a surprise is that?
Gigantic surprise. This is a big question I think the WPI will have to answer. You look at West Allegheny, no, they only played 8 games because they started late and they lost one because of weather. But they beat Montour last night, undefeated Montour, and they tied Montour and Aliquippa for the conference championship. Now, they all beat each other, so you go to tiebreaker points. On the tiebreaker points, Aliquippa finished first. Then the system reverts back to head-to-head. For seeding purposes, West Allegheny finished second because they beat Montour. Montour finished third on those tiebreaker points. So how in the world is West Allegheny, the number 8 seed, lower than 2 wild card teams in that classification? I'm sorry, that one's a head scratcher, Dan. Need some answers on that one.
So now we go to the 4-5 game in the 4A field. With 2 losses, Aliquippa is the 4 seed, the defending WPIAL and state champs. They will take on number 5 seed Trinity. Mike, your reaction to this?
Trinity, big win last night for them. Great for their program to beat Bell Vernon to get in the playoffs. But Aliquippa been to the championship 16 years in a row. I'm sure they're saying they might get no respect because, again, you go to that scenario and you go to the tiebreaker points, they finish as the number 1 seed in that conference. Yet, they get the number 4 seed overall. Tell me, Dan.
Let's go to the other side of the bracket.
Whip Nation's going to have some, may a little chip on their shoulder.
So it'll be an interesting 4A field for sure as we, again, move on now to the other side of the bracket. The number 2 seed, despite suffering the loss in Week 9, will be awarded to the Montour Spartans, taking on the number 7 Mars Fightin' Planets. Surprised that Montour was able to maintain such a high seeding despite that loss to West Allegheny, basically what we talked about a moment ago.
I know they're 9-1, but yeah, I mean, if you have that point system, I know it's still a matter of opinion by the committee, but Montour, by that point system, the tiebreaker points, finished 3rd in that conference, yet they get the number 2 seed overall.
The bottom half of the bracket, in the 3-6 game, the McKeesport Tigers. They started off slow but have been able to finish strong. One of the strongest schedules out there. The Tigers will take on the number 6 Bell Vernon Leopards, who are able to get into the postseason field in their first year back in 4A, back-to-back 3A, WPIAL, and state champions. It's a rematch of a game that McKeesport earlier this year won handedly.
Well, there's a lot of question who would get that final wild card spot, Bell Vernon or West Mifflin. They were very similar. They had similar losses, TJ and McKeesport. They both lost to them. West Mifflin thought they should maybe be in. Bell Vernon, Dan, did the WPL, did it matter that they won the last 2 state championships in 3A before they moved up? Should that matter? I don't know. Sometimes the WPL committee goes a little bit on what your tradition is. Is that right or wrong? I don't know about that. But a little surprising also that Bell Vernon, a wild card team that finishes 3rd, gets ahead of Mars. I know Mars doesn't have any really quality wins, but you know what? Neither does Bell Vernon.
That's great.
But you're putting, I guess, are you comparing apples and oranges with Mars and Bell Vernon? I don't know, but Bell Vernon got a 6 seed ahead of a team that finished 2nd in their conference. I don't know.
Well, we invite you to stay tuned as you take a look. For those watching on our video channels, you saw the 1 through 8 seedings. Again, it is Thomas Jefferson, Montour, McKeesport, Aliquippa, the top 4. The bottom 4 go to Trinity, Bell Vernon, Mars, and West Allegheny. One final look as this game will be played at Norwin High School Saturday at noon, a couple of Saturdays from today. Believe it or not, that's hard to imagine that's where we're at, and that's how quickly this is going to come up on us. Well, coming up on a break and coming up next, we will reveal the 3A classification, the 2A classification, still waiting on the results of a game played this afternoon at Riverview High School as Riverview and Jeanette are tangling right now. I believe that game is closing in, and if not, just at about halftime, that is holding up the proceedings of the 1A bracket, which we do not have just yet. But we have revealed 6, 5, and 4 so far, and we have 3 and 2A coming up in just a moment. This is Selection Saturday from the KDKA Radio and the WPIAL, presented by Pennsylvania Western University. Here we go. And welcome back inside our KDKA radio studios. Penn West University brings you Selection Saturday on KDKA from the WPIAL. And again, a special thank you to all of our sponsors, Home Team Collections, for all of your custom jersey and photo framing needs for this high school football and championship run, along with Monticello's Pizza and Noble Environmental Services. Dan Zang, really play-by-play broadcaster for our KDKA Radio Friday Night Lights Game of the Week, and the longtime Post-Gazette sports editor, Mike White. Just to bring everybody up to speed very quickly, the 1 seeds in each of the 6, 5, and 4 classifications: Central Catholic, Pine Richland over Upper St. Clair, who gets the 2. Thomas Jefferson is the 1 seed in the 4A classification. You can follow along our social channels, KDKA Radio on X, Instagram, and Facebook. The brackets are posted there, as well as news coverage at kdkaradio.com. This segment, we will reveal the 3 and 2A brackets, because 1A right now is being held up by a game at Riverview against Jeanette, which is at the half, and I believe, Mike, we checked on it while we were at break, and it is
20-7, Jeanette at the half.
So Jeanette is up, and once that game comes final, the brackets will be finalized by the committee, and we will reveal those to you on a number of channels at once. All right, now to the 3A field, and let's go ahead. Take a look at the 3A bracket and essentially the ground rules for it. Just to get everybody up to speed, it is essentially identical to what the parameters of the 5A classification is, and that is the 12 playoff spots awarded in 3A. There will be 4 byes awarded to the top 4 seeds, and there will be the 3 at-large wildcard bids that have been selected by the committee earlier this morning. So, without any further ado, let's get to it. And I'm not sure, Mike, there is much surprise the way that they have rolled through their competition so far in 2024. The Imani Christian Academy is awarded the number 1 seed, and they get the first bye. So they will wait until to play their game Friday, November the 8th at Graham Field, and they await the winner of the 8-9 matchup that will be played at Southmoreland High School. The Scotties, awarded the number 8 seed. They will take on the Golden Rams of Highlands. What do you make of this 8-9 matchup? Everybody always zeroes in on the 8 versus 9. How does this one shake up?
Well, Southmoreland never won a playoff game. But it's nice to see some of these new teams get in here and get some life into the program and the community. 8-9 games are always good, but I think Highlands is a sleeper team in that classification. They even played Imani, I think, earlier this year. But they have a quarterback, Minaj Lucas. He's one of the 3 quarterbacks this year that ran for 1,000 yards and threw for 1,000 yards in the regular season. Watch Highlands. I like them as a sleeper team.
All right, so last night at Gypsy Glen Stadium, it was a big win for the Beaver Bobcats, and that win over the Avonworth Antelopes, they were able to get a 4 seed and a first-round bye worth their weight in gold. So they will have to wait till next week to host a playoff game against, well, an opponent that they just played and beat potentially, because the 5 seed, the Antelopes of Avonworth, are in the bottom part of the bracket, and they get 12 seed Greensburg, Salem. So, yeah, that game meant quite a bit at Gypsy Glen Stadium in the eyes of the committee.
Well, since the preseason, Beaver has been one of my favorite teams. Is I thought one of the most underrated teams, and they're 8-2, Dan. Only losses to Central Valley and Imani Christian. They have Brady Mayo back from an injury as a key for them, receiver, defensive back. Dan, they've got a lot of things to go for them. I think they could really make a run in these playoffs. And you look at, though, they win first round. Avonworth wins the first round. They have to play again in 2 weeks. But I really like this Beaver team, and they seem to be peaking at the right time.
So over to the other side of the bracket, the 2 seed and a first-round bye awarded to the Warriors of Central Valley. Warriors at number 2. I suppose that's no surprise, or is it? What do you make of the Warriors getting the 2?
Well, there is a 3-way tie for first in the Western Hills Conference: Central Valley, Beaver, and Avonworth. Now, on this one, contrary to what happened in 4A, you go to the tiebreaker points. Central Valley finished first. They got the number 2 seed. Beaver go back to head-to-head. They beat Avonworth. They finished as the number 2 seed in the Western Hills. They got a number 4 seed. And Avonworth got a number 5 seed. However, They didn't follow that in 4A with them on tour in the Parkway Conference. So little contradiction there, but Central Valley only 5-5 have played a really, really good schedule, Dan. Really good.
They certainly did, and they will await the winner of the 7 versus 10 game that will be played at Central Valley High School Friday, the 8th of November at 7 p.m. And that 7 versus 10 game is the Yellow Jackets of Freeport getting the 7 seed. They take on Mount Pleasant, and that will be at Freeport High School coming up this Friday, November the 1st at 7 p.m.
Freeport, pretty good record. Mount Pleasant was in the conference championship hunt all the way until the last week of the season. So, whoever wins that game, a little bit of a road trip, though, to Central Valley.
The 3 seed, the Elizabeth Forward Warriors, awarded the bye. The Warriors, another good year, and that program has been solid here the better part of a half-decade.
They've really turned that around, and I think they're a team to watch in the playoffs. They win another conference championship, and who they get in the 6-11 game will be...
That will be the Lancers of Deer Lakes High and the Trojans of North Catholic in the 6-11 game played Friday, November 1st at Deer Lakes High School. Deer Lakes, a solid season. The Trojans, they've been up and down, but obviously they've been able to find their way into the postseason with one of the at-large bids.
Well, they make it with a wild card bid. Deer Lakes, they finished second in the conference, but I don't think anyone really knows how good they are. North Catholic, interesting, Dan, with them. They make it. They played a tough schedule, non-conference schedule. They make it in the playoffs. They have the leading passer in the WPIL for the regular season, Joey Felitsky, and also the leading receiver in Riker Kennedy. That's the first time since 2003 that the WPIL one team has had the leading passer and the leading receiver for the regular season. So if you have a passing attack, you can maybe do some damage in the playoffs. Maybe the Trojans can.
All right, here, let's take another look at that 3A bracket brought to you by Monticello's Pizza. Amani Christian getting the 1 seed. The 2 goes to Central Valley. The 3 goes to Elizabeth Forward. Beaver, with their victory last night at Gypsy Glen Stadium over Avonworth, they're able to edge by the Antelopes, get that 4 and the coveted bye. So the Lopes are playing in the 5-12 game against Greensburg-Salem. And you take a look at that 8-9 game as Southmoreland will look for their first ever playoff victory. They are hosting a playoff game on Friday, November 1st. At Southmoreland High School. That's, again, brought to you by Monticello's Pizza. Now we move on to the 2A field. And taking a look at 2A, a mixed bag. A lot of folks, Mike, have said that, this classification, for whatever reason, is, you talk about 6A not exactly being salacious and juicy. And are you saying much of the same here, the 2A is a yawn? Or can perhaps this bracket reveal this 2A field overall and the playoffs maybe change your tune on that?
I wouldn't say it's a yawn from competitiveness in the playoffs, but I think it's a yawn. I think it's the weakest classification without a doubt as far as depth of quality teams. I don't think it has as many quality teams as any other classifications, but there's no doubt Seton LaSalle head and shoulders above everybody else.
Well, taking a look at it, of no surprise, the Rebels are awarded the top seed. And here's the quick snapshot, by the way, of the 13 playoff spots that are awarded. 3 byes go to the top spots. Seton LaSalle, yes, is going to get that top seed here. You'll see in a moment. And 4 at-large wild card bids. So there are the Rebels at the top of the bracket. They will play at Dormont Memorial Stadium on Friday the 8th, and they will await the winner in an 8-9 game. Our Lady of Sacred Heart had a big victory, 1 point over Keystone Oaks last night, and perhaps that was able to garner them a home game. Now, where that is going to be played is to be determined, but we do know that they'll take on number 9 Riverside. Again, the location is still TBD there. What do you make of the 8-9 game? We zero in right on it.
Got to talk about Van Cavals from Our Lady of the Sacred Heart. I think one of the most interesting players at WPIL. He's 6'5", about 240. He's a defensive end recruit for Akron, but he plays quarterback for Olsh. And he does a lot of different things. So you put a 6'5", 240-pound quarterback in at the 2A level, can do some damage. With him, watch out for them in the playoffs. Could be a sleeper team.
Okay, so now on to the 4-13 game. Steel Valley got off to a bit of a sluggish start, but they were able to rally there at the end. They do not garner a bye. They take on the Little Prexies of Washington. What do we make of Steel Valley going into the field?
What do I make of them? Watch out. Nobody wants to play Steel Valley, Dan, in this classification. They started 1-3. They didn't have Deron Barksdale back yet, a quarterback. They've gotten healthy. They've won 6 in a row. Donald Barksdale's closing in. He was Deron's brother on 5,000 career yards rushing. They've won 6 in a row. They've rolled over everybody. They rolled over South Allegheny last night. They've been in a championship 2 years in a row. Guess what? They're good enough to make it 3 years in a row. Watch them. Watch them in the playoffs.
That'll be played at Campbell Field in Munhall, Friday the 1st at 7 p.m. in the 4-13 game. Now moving down to Western Beaver as the number 5 seed. They are awarded the seed, and they will have to play this game on Saturday at 1 p.m. at Western Beaver High School. So keep that in mind. Again, Saturday the 2nd, Western Beaver High School. They will take on the Carleton Cougars, who had a resurgent year, and they slot in as the number 12.
Hey, how about those Cougars? The longest drought in the playoffs in the WPIAL. Hadn't made it since 2001.
Oh, my.
Devontae Dean, really good dual-threat quarterback, leads them to a wild card spot. Hey, kudos to them. Shout out to them. John Tortorella has done a great job of making that team competitive, getting them in the playoffs. You know, for some schools of making the playoffs, Dan, you know, your TJ's, Eloquent, but okay. Someone like that, Carleton, great for them, great for the school, great for the community.
Great year for the Cougars as the number 12 seed. All right, number 2 seed. Let's go to the other side of the bracket, and there you see it all. The South Park Eagles are awarded the bye. And then in the 7-10 game, the Mohawk Warriors will take on the Keystone Oaks Golden Eagles in that 7-10 game. How about Elwood City, a well-deserved and hard-earned 3 seed and the bye? Let's talk about Elwood City, as you also see at the bottom of the bracket, South Allegheny and Waynesburg in the 6-11. So let's focus in on Elwood City as the 3 seed earning that bye.
Finish undefeated in the regular season for the first time since 1944. When they played at Pitt Stadium in the championship, lost at Denora, a great Denora team. I think it's one of the great stories of the year. Dan Bradley, he coaches the head coach of football and the head coach of the basketball team. Nobody in the WPL does that as far as boys basketball. They've really come on. Elijah Palmer McCain, 4,000 yards rusher. And they were bad. They had 3 straight non-winning seasons till Dan Bradley came on. I think it's one of the better feel-good stories this year. So is South Allegheny. They had their best start since 1979, and they get a number 6 seed. That is great for South Allegheny, the alma mater of Jesse James.
So, taking a look at this side of the bracket from the 2 seed to the 3 seed, does anything in particular stand out there? Maybe do we debate South Park versus Elwood City in some respects as to who should have received the 2 versus the 3?
Well, you could have some, this classification overall has 3 4,000-yard rushers. That's pretty unusual. Eric Doru, South Park, Elwood City, Elijah Palmer McCain, and now Donald Barksdale of Steel Valley. I really like that, the next round games, you could have a matchup there of Elwood City and South Allegheny. But Waynesburg they've been kind of hot and cold too. But what about the Flying Dan Zangrillis? They got a number 10 seed, Keystone Oaks. They got to play Mohawk.
They do.
What do you think?
That's a long ride. It's not close from the rolling South Hills all the way up to.
Is the statue of the Dan Zangrilli out there yet?
It is not. Now they will pass, however, the Mike White statue at Martirelli Stadium on their commute.
Where's that, by the garbage can?
Heading north, yes. Speaking of which, Noble Environmental Services giving you the 2A bracket. Keep calm and recycle with Noble Environmental Services. So there you go, taking a look at the whole shebang in 3A. Again, in that 3A classification, 12 playoff spots, 4 byes awarded, then the 3 at-large bids, with Seton LaSalle getting the top seed and those wild cards awarded by the selection committee. No particular upsets or grievances to file here, as maybe was the case in the 4A field, Mike?
No, I don't see anything. I'm pretty good with that field, 2A.
Okay. All right. Let's take a quick break. And when we return, we will recap for all of those that are watching on our KDKA Radio YouTube channel for high school sports, at Facebook, KDKA Radio, along at KDKARadio.com, the video stream, and, of course, all of our listeners at 100.1 FM and AM 1020, also along the free Odyssey app. We will get everybody caught up to speed if you just happen to join us midway through the conversation. We are also posting plenty of content. The brackets have been revealed on our social channels. KDKA Radio is the handle for X, Instagram, and Facebook as well. So we have revealed 5 of the 6 classifications. We are awaiting the 1A bracket, but there's a game going on right now that has a direct impact as to how the 1A classifications going to be decided. And that game is Jeanette Riverview, with Jeanette leading as they are now in the second half. So once we get the final results, we'll be able to pass those along to you. Also coming up later on in the program, Vince Sortino, the Chief Operating Officer of the WPIAL. He's up there, one of the commanding gentlemen in charge of the entire league, who was in the war room earlier this morning when everybody on the committee assembled. We'll be by to answer some questions and maybe settle some of the debates that are probably ongoing right now on social media and the text threads, and some communities are going to be really pleased. Some are probably going to be scratching their head, and we'll try to solve all the world's problems and answer all of the burning questions. But when we come back in just a moment, Mike and I will kick around and reset, recap, bring everybody up to speed, and again give you the storylines that have been unfolding today since we took the air at 1 o'clock with our KDKA Radio Selection Saturday program in partnership with the WPIAL as its flagship station. And it's all brought to you by Pennsylvania Western University. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us here on The Voice of Pittsburgh as live television and radio. We want to remind you that Pennsylvania Western University's Fall Open House, the Clarion and Edinburgh campuses will be available for a tour coming up on November the 9th, and then the Cal U campus on November the 16th, which is one of the days of the WPIAL Championships, that particular Saturday, the 4 and 6 game. Welcome back, everybody. Dan Zangrilli, play-by-play man for the KDKA Radio Friday Night Lights game of the week with Mike White of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the high school sports editor. We have revealed the brackets. They are available at kdkaradio.com for you to review. Also, you can check out our social channels, and we're going to just recap and reset some of them. Still awaiting the 1A bracket because of a game ongoing right now in the second half. Jeanette and Riverview, with the Jayhawks leading Riverview at the moment right now. The completion of that game will set forth essentially the 1A bracket, which again is not yet complete, so we cannot reveal it. Once we get it, we'll send it along to you as quickly as possible. Just quickly touching the 6A field, it is straightforward. 1 seed going to Central Catholic, the 2 seed going to the North Allegheny Tigers. You're looking at the 5A bracket there, which you're going to get to in a moment here. But the 3 seed will go to Mount Lebanon, and the 4 seed going to Seneca Valley. Let me just double check that very quickly.
That's right.
I did. I had it right. Okay, now we were looking at the 5A bracket. The 1 seed, which I think there was a lot of debate, and there's going to be a question on as to what was decided and what criteria was used to seed Pine Richland number 1. They do have the 1 loss on their ledger against North Allegheny, which that was a game that they had won in many respects. It was aired on KDKA radio. They get the 1 seed over Upper St. Clair, who finished undefeated in the Allegheny 6 conference. So again, Mike, we go back to the debate here as to whether or not it was strength of schedule, which you would think that Upper St. Clair had over Pine Richland to some degree, or quality of win, which the Rams had in a home victory over the Central Catholic Vikings, obviously the top seed in the 6A classification. So that win proved to be paramount there. But as we, for those watching on our visual channels, you're looking at this bracket, Mike, do you see anything that maybe jumps out there that is a miss, or anything that just, it's a game that you want to circle for next Friday night?
Well, I think that 8-9 game, Franklin Regional at North Hills, is pretty good. But, Dan, the only thing with, I really don't have a problem with Pine Richland getting the number 1 seed. And really, when you look at it, is there that much of a difference in this bracket between number 1 and number 2 seeds? The only thing is, if you would have put Upper St. Clair the number 1 seed and Pine Richland number 2, now you have Upper St. Clair on the same side of the bracket as Peters Township. And they played in the regular season. And if they would get to the semifinals, which is definitely a possibility. You got 2 teams that play in the conference. Would it have been nicer maybe Pine Richland if they get to the semifinals to play Peters Township, and then Upper St. Clair would be on the side of the bracket. They play Woodland Hills. Some teams that aren't so familiar with each other. But again, you're looking also at that one of the wild card teams. You look at Latrobe. They got one of the wild cards. They tied for 4th in their conference with Gateway and with Kiski area. Now, Gateway lost 2 games recently by extra points, a missed extra point on a block and a bad snap late in the game. So they tied for 3rd. And no, Gateway's record wasn't good, but if you go by the tiebreaker points that WPL uses, Gateway would have finished 4th. And they did not get the wild card spot. Latrobe got the wild card spot instead.
So we are on both radio and television. For those on the TV side, you can see the graphic, but those that are driving around, I just want to run those down for you from an audio perspective, and we'll move on to the 4A field here in just a moment. So again, the 1 seed is Pine Richland. They get a bye, 104 awarded in the 5A field. They will await the winner of the 8-9 game between North Hills and Franklin Regional. The bottom half of that bracket will have 4 seed Woodland Hills getting a bye. They await the winner of 5 versus 12 Bethel Park hosting Greater Latrobe in that 5A game this coming Friday. On the other side of the bracket in 5A, 2 seed Upper St. Clair gets one of those 4 byes, awaiting the winner of the 7-10 game, Penn Hills and Moon. That will be played at Penn Hills High School. That will be our KDKA radio game of the week from Bowser Chevrolet coming up on Friday at Penn Hills High School. We make that announcement right now, so you can make your programming notes to join us for what I think is going to be a fantastic, very intriguing contest there, Mike.
I agree with you. That's a 7-10 matchup, and as we said before, the way Moon plays with that power of football, trying to control the clock, and they really can stay in the game with anyone. And Penn Hill's playing really well lately.
So Peters Township with a 31-28 victory at home in the last minute against Bethel Park last night. It earns them the number 3 seed, and they get that coveted bye to rest up and be ready for the winner of the 6-11 game. Penn Trafford and South Fayette will meet at Penn Trafford High School out at Harrison City, and that is the 5A classification for those on the radio side running it down. Now, let's take a look for those on TV at the 4A field to recap and reset. And this is where I think a lot of the conversation and the controversy is going to be centered here, because of not only what happened last night, West Allegheny is able to defeat the Montour Spartans in overtime, but West Allegheny is awarded the 8th seed. So that victory, for whatever reason, didn't carry much weight in the eyes of the selection committee for them to be seeded 8th. But Thomas Jefferson, because of the Montour loss, was awarded the number 1 seed. They finished the season undefeated and untied, so they get the 1 versus 8. That's TJ versus West Allegheny in round 1, but Aliquippa, with their 2 losses, falls to the number 4 seed. Trinity gets the 5. 2-7 game, Montour and Mars, and 3 versus 6. It is McKeesport, Bell Vernon, in what is going to be, again, a much-talked-about 4A classification.
You know, you can sit here and say they don't like to play teams from the same conference in the first round. Okay, I get that, but it's still, excuse me while I do this, scratch my head. This is just a head-scratcher. I mean, you know, you look at the conference with Peters Township, Bethel Park, you know, or you look at some of the other conferences where there are 3-way ties. It makes sense with what they did with the tiebreakers. I don't have an answer, Dan. You know, West Allegheny, I think they have a big gripe. You know, the number 8 seed, they tied for the conference championship under the tiebreaker points, and the head-to-head. Then they would be the number 2 seed in that conference behind Aliquippa. Yet Montour gets the number 2 seed. I understand Montour's 9-1. But you could say, hey, you know what? They're a 2-point conversion away from being 8-2 and losing to Aliquippa. And the Quips, number 4.
So let me ask you this: what issues do you take primarily with the seedings? And if you were, commissioner of the WPIAL or the head of the football steering committee, perhaps how would you arrange the deck chairs or tweak things? Maybe what you feel to be is, dare I say, for lack of a better term, most egregious.
Well, I wouldn't have West Allegheny number 8. I would tell you that. I mean, that win was impressive, and they gave Aliquippa a good game. It wasn't like they got destroyed by Aliquippa.
So you give your West Allegheny love right there. So then who would be the 8? Would that be Mars?
Well, I would have put West Mifflin in the 8.
Okay. Then who sits out?
Bell Vernon.
So Bell Vernon out. And
I don't think
West
Bell
Mifflin.
Vernon. I mean, Bell Vernon and West Mifflin are exactly the same. They both lost to McKeesport and Thomas Jefferson, comparable scores. You could flip a coin with them.
Okay.
But Bell Vernon gets 6. I mean, Bell Vernon doesn't have really a quality win. They played a tough schedule. I will say that. So did Mars. Mars doesn't have a quality win. Like a real good quality win. But they finished second in their conference. And Bell Vernon had a chance to finish second, and they didn't do it. They lost to Trinity last night. And I don't know. I don't know how you can reconcile if you use this point system to decide playoff seeds, and if we get the 3A, you used it with Beaver, Central Valley, and Avonworth. They were a 3-way tie for the conference championship, and you gave Central Valley number 1 seed. You gave them a higher seed, then Beaver, but Beaver was next, and then you had Avonworth. Where this one, Aliquippa was the number 1 seed on the tiebreaker points, and they got number 4. Montour was the 3rd seed in that conference on the tiebreakers, and they got the number 2 seed. I just, I know no more. They're not going by. It's their opinions, and I'm fine with that. But it's just what you do in one class, you don't do in the other. But maybe they have an explanation.
So, and I think this is a victim of the self-imposed guidelines of not wanting to pit the conference opponents against one another in the first round, which I can understand and I can appreciate. But I think that puts some real restrictions on their flexibility as to where they could go, especially when you're looking at a rather truncated and smaller field where there's just 8 teams. So I think that that's really what this comes down to when you look at it, how they're painted into a corner. There's not a lot of wiggle room with the number of teams in the field, so where can you slot them? Whereas if you have a 12-team field, if you have a 13-team field, you can sort of mix and match a little bit more with a few extra spots, and that doesn't appear to be the case. They don't have that luxury in 4A, so to an extent they have sold out on that belief that you cannot match conference teams, or you at all costs try to avoid that in the first round. In a truncated field, you again have very little wiggle room.
I wish I had my brackets that I did beforehand. But I think real quick right there, you could take Aliquippa, move them to number 2, okay? Mm-hmm. And if you still wanted Montour to be ahead of West Allegheny, you could have moved Montour to number 4.
And with all due respect to Aliquippa, that's a 2-loss team.
Who is Aliquippa?
Aliquippa.
Yes, Montour's a 1-loss team, but they all beat each other.
So should a 2-loss team be seated higher than a 1-loss team?
They lost to a Penn Hills team that's in 5A playoffs.
And then Aliquippa, and then Montour has the head-to-head on Aliquippa.
But I could say, well, Montour didn't beat West Allegheny. Aliquippa did beat West Allegheny, and they beat West Allegheny by 12 points. Montour beat Aliquippa by 1 point.
It's all fascinating, and I hope everybody's able to follow along this tennis match that is the 4A bracket.
I just you have these tiebreakers for conference, but then you don't pay attention to them with the seeds when you do pay attention to them with other conferences.
Burning questions to be answered by WPIAL Chief Operating Officer Vince Sortino coming up later in this hour. As we've bled over into the 2 o'clock p.m. hour, for those on the radio side, we'll be back in just a moment. We will also be back here on the visual side for those watching at KDKARadio.com, our KDKA Radio Facebook page, and on our High School Sports KDKA Radio YouTube channel. This is Selection Saturday from KDKA and the WPIAL from Pennsylvania Western University. And we welcome you back inside our Bowser Chevrolet theaters as KDKA Radio is on the air into our second hour of Selection Saturday coverage. The brackets in 5 of the 6 classifications have been revealed. We are awaiting results of a game between Jeanette and Riverview in the second half before the final stamp can be put on the 1A playoff field. And once we get those brackets, we will reveal them to you. The top seeds in each classification so far: 6A, it goes to Central Catholic. In 5A, it goes to Pine Richland. In 4A, it goes to unbeaten Thomas Jefferson. Amani Christian, as you take a look here at the 3A field, which will Mike White of the Post-Gazette kick around. Amani Christian gets that 1 seed as no surprise, as Southmoreland in that 8-9 game is going to look to win their first playoff game in school history. Of all of the matchups here for those on the television side, I don't know which game I like the most. Deer Lakes North Catholic is a 6-11, seems to be somewhat juicy and intriguing. Beaver gets the bye with their win over Avonworth last night at Gypsy Glen Stadium. That will be a terrific quarterfinal rematch in essentially just 2 weeks' time. 2 teams meeting each other in a matter of 2 weeks. So that will be fun, looking ahead to a potential quarterfinal matchup, assuming the Antelopes can get past the Golden Lions of Greensburg-Salem.
Yeah, and I'm looking at some brackets, my proposed brackets, Dan, and, it's a shame, really, that Beaver, they got a bye, but they're probably going to have to play Avonworth right again.
That's what I mean.
And
that's going to be fascinating.
What I would have maybe done is, I'm looking at my brackets here. I think I would have given Beaver the winner of the North Catholic Deer Lakes game. Okay. And would have given Beaver number 3 seed and moved Elizabeth forward up to that spot that Beaver has, so that Elizabeth forward would play the winner.
Well, you would knock Beaver. You would knock Elizabeth forward down from the 3 to the 4, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but that's not. I don't
significant.
Think that's not really significant.
Okay.
But I think Beaver's pretty good. I think EF is too. But then you at least stay away from 2 teams playing each other. Beaver plays Avonworth again in 2 weeks. I mean, and just that little tweak, Dan, just that little tweak would have made things a little better. And you know what? I want to say this. WPIL gets, when you do these things, no matter what the sport, they get criticized unfairly a lot lot of times. But when you do these things, you're going to get criticized no matter what you do. Okay? And you have to expect that. But it is our job here to maybe, question and say, hey, wait a second here. And there have been some things, I think they have done some things in the past that let themselves open for criticism. There are some there. We go back to that 4A bracket. Here, you want me? I think it would have probably pleased but a lot of people, because I'm getting texts from coaches in 4A that are like, I'm getting a lot of texts saying, what in the world is going on? I mean, head coaches, assistant coaches. What I would have done in 4A, I would have went West Mifflin, got the wild card.
Okay.
And I understand that. Then them in Bell Vernon, you could have flipped them. West Mifflin at Thomas Jefferson, the number 1 seed. Montour gets the number 5 seed. They play at McKeesport, number 4. Trinity, number 7, number two team in their conference, plays at Aliquippa, the number 2 seed. Mars, number 6, plays at West Allegheny, the number 3 seed.
So, okay.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
So you take – there's part of me – because one issue maybe I take exception to is you're wanting to put West Mifflin in over Bell Vernon. To me – and, we talk about tradition, we talk about history, we talk about, credibility.
I know what you're going to say.
Equity.
I hate this.
You don't like it. Okay, well, I mean, I think that there's
something. I know what you're going to say.
There's something to be said about it, though, that West Mifflin, I think, still has a lot to prove. that has to, and I'm not saying that West Mifflin, if they were in the field, would have not earned a spot into the postseason, but Bell Vernon has earned, no pun intended, their leopard spots, right? And I understand that last year was last year. This is the new year, and I get that, and you can't live in the past.
They're not even in the same classification.
I do. I understand that.
They lost a ton of players.
But that brings us, and I don't mean to change the subject here, but I do want to get your thoughts, because as we talk about subjectivity being central to, I guess, what's new in 2024 as to how this playoff field was assembled. How do we feel how the wild card and the selection committee injecting their subjectivity and their opinion into selecting these wild cards? Overall, 60,000-foot view across the board, 6 down to 2A. How do you feel they did in that regard in hand-picking these wild cards?
I don't have a problem with them hand-picking.
So you think they did it?
I'm not saying they picked the right teams. They aren't the teams I would have picked.
Well, all across the board. So we just got an idea of one, and that was this 4A example. West Mifflin does not get in. Bell Vernon does. The 5A.
And I'm okay with that, actually.
Okay. What about the 5A? We talked about 3-7 Gateway, 5-5 Latrobe. That was another instance of a wild card, right? The selection, where what do you do there? There was a whole jumbled mess as to who you could potentially pick. Kiski was in the conversation. Gateway's obviously in the conversation out of the Big East. Eventually, it is Latrobe that gets that wild card spot in 5A. Are you okay with, again, how everybody deployed the use of their opinion, their power, their ability to hand select these wild cards?
I don't have a big problem with Latrobe, but my point is, again, they have a system in place to break ties for playoff spots, okay? And they use that system. Mm. In the old system, just a year ago, Kiski area, Gateway, Latrobe all tied for 4th place. And they would have used their tie-breaking system for a wild card. And Gateway would have come out as that team for the wild card based on tiebreaker points. Now, you can sit here and say, well, Latrobe beat Gateway. Well, Gateway beat Kiski, and Kiski beat Latrobe, and Latrobe beat Gateway, and they all tied. So you got to have some tiebreaker system, and they do. Now, Latrobe is a much, much different team since Alex Tatch went out. I know they beat Gateway, close game, but under those tiebreaker points, Gateway finished 4th. And they didn't get the wild card spot.
Oh, interesting. Let's, as we're recapping everything, we showed you the 3A field this segment. I do want to get down to the 2A classification just to recycle that, get everybody up to speed. And then we'll be joined by Vince Sortino, the Chief Operating Officer of the WPIAL, here in a moment. And we'll put him on this hot seat to Mike's left, and we'll ask him all of these questions that we are debating. But taking a look at the 2A field, just to get everybody caught up to speed, no real surprises with Seton LaSalle getting the top seed, and that by the 8-9 game of Our Lady of Sacred Heart in Riverside is a good matchup. Steel Valley coming on to get the 4 seed late against Washington. 2 seed going to the South Park Eagles. Elwood City, a well-earned number 3 seed and a first-round bye, one of the 3 awarded. The buys went to everybody that should have gotten the mic. Is that how you see it in 2A?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. The best matchup in this particular bracket for you is what? Or maybe even looking ahead to the quarterfinals of a potential matchup that you're going to be circling and really looking forward to.
Well, I like South Allegheny and who is it, Greensburg-Salem? That bottom game there?
Greensburg Central.
Greensburg Central. Okay. No, that's... Who is it? Who's South Allegheny playing down in that ball? Greensburg-Salem.
No, it's
6-11.
The 6-11 game is Waynesburg.
Oh, Waynesburg. I like that one because I want to see what South Allegheny does in the playoffs because they don't get to the playoffs very often. And then you got the next round. The winner of that game plays Elwood City. I think that's a pretty good matchup also. Carleton, Western Beaver. Looking ahead, I think Western Beaver should win that game. Looking ahead, Western Beaver to maybe against Steel Valley in the next round. You've got Javen Peel from Western Beaver. He set a freshman record for WPL passing yardage last year for a freshman. with over 2,000 yards, and he has near 2,000 again this year. And then maybe going up against the Steel Valley team that is so hot, and they have the Barksdale brothers. And they do their thing on the run, so it's going to be that would be a great matchup. The pass against the run, I really like that one. And the Seton. Boy, Seton has been really, really impressive this year. But those are a couple games I like in there.
All right, we invite you to stay tuned. Coming up next, Vince Ortino from the WPIL office, the Chief Operating Officer, will be on that hot seat, and we look forward to chatting with him here in just a moment. So do stay with us. We're back in just a moment with our KDKA Radio WPIL Selection Saturday program that's all presented by Pennsylvania Western University. We'll be right back.
the one conference
Stand
with
by.
West A.
Stand by. Here we go. Stand by.
I've got a text from my.
Stand by. Hold on. Well, he's the most wanted man in southwestern Pennsylvania right now, and we have him captive here. I don't know if he's against his will or not. Vince Sortino of the WPIL, the Chief Operating Officer, has agreed so graciously to be put on the hot seat here as we welcome you back to Pennsylvania Western University Selection Saturday across KDKA Radio and the WPIL. We are still awaiting the 1A bracket, and that will be decided and formalized once Jeanette and Riverview are done playing their Saturday afternoon matinee. Dan Zangrili, the Post-Gazette sports writer from the Post-Gazette, Mike White, and as we mentioned, Vince Sortino is here as well. Vince, before we get into really all of the burning questions, social media, I think maybe we're hearing is burning up with some of the comments and all of the de facto committee members. I want you to maybe shed some light, and if you can show, you bring in this 11 by 17 spreadsheet of all of the preparation. It looks like something that Mike Tomlin or Arthur Smith would use, whether they figure out to go for something on fourth down from their own 41-yard line. And if you can flip that over to the camera for those watching, and that's just one of the classifications. I mean, there's math involved here, it appears, Vince, and that scares me.
Yeah, and you asked me earlier, you didn't think I was an Excel person, and I'm not. So I did not create
So
this.
you can't take credit for this work of art.
I cannot take credit for
Did
this.
you use crayons for that?
This is the creation of our committee members. Mike Burrell and Jason Alexa do an amazing job as our co-chairman of the committee. We have certain committee members that jump on starting last night. Actually, all week long, every week, there's sessions that they talk about, and last night they probably started around 10 o'clock, got finished around 2:30 in the morning, making sure all the Gardner points added up, all the tiebreakers, creating this document for each classification. It has the conference record, overall record, Gardner points, the tiebreaker points. It's a great document, common opponents, it's color-coded, so that all the committee members are looking at the same information when they come into the meeting this morning.
And it's just not one long night with the committee members. You were shedding some light while we were at break as to the process that is ongoing from essentially week 0 all the way up until this point. And could you maybe share a look behind the curtain there as to what that process is like by a gentleman like Mike Burrell and Jason Alexa, among many others on that committee who are doing ongoing recognizance work here, recon work?
Yeah, and many of our committee members are on the same text call every week, and they're touching base after the games that they either went to or watched or got feedback from. So there's constant updates weekly throughout the season between the committee members, so that when they come in, as they did this morning, every one of those committee members come in prepared. More so, some committee members have specific areas that they're classifications that they have more knowledge in. We have people on the committee that focus on 1A, 2A, 3A, and all the way up. So, and we take their expertise into bringing back to the committee games they have may have watched, and given us that information.
The first year where subjectivity really becomes part of the equation as far as selecting the actual teams in the field, not talking about the seedings here. The wild cards in particular, how do you feel that process went? What sort of debate, what sort of back and forth was there in that room this morning in selecting those wild card teams?
Well, once again, it was a change. So after last year, we had, if I can remember back, we had a pretty good team in Upper St. Clair.
Right.
Did not get in last year.
At 8-2.
And we talked about it and said there has to be some change made to the system. So we went to that. And I think the event went fairly well. Not everything that you do in every system is perfect. You know, there's going to be people out there that think that Team A should have been in instead of Team B, and that's what you have debates on. I could tell you that from the time we come in and start the classifications and start talking about the teams and the brackets, we start from 1 and 2. There's a discussion on who should be the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed. And we don't move on. The committee does not move on from that until there's agreement among the committee. So if there's still debate going on and there's still questions, we don't go on to 3 and 4 until 1 and 2 has been thoroughly discussed and everyone gives a thumbs up, and they're happy with it.
So is that, just to be clear, is that unanimous or is it a majority vote of agreement?
No, it's we'll move on if it's not unanimous at times, because we had a vote today where there was one person on the committee that out of our, I guess, 10, 11 people on the committee that felt, we do who do you think should be 3 and 4, raise your hand, and we had one that was not in agreement. So it's not always 100% in agreement, but it's not always going to be, so, and we move on.
Do you think you did a good job? Just a straightforward question.
I think the committee
No, we did it.
I think the committee did a great job reviewing all the information and making decisions based on what they were given. And common opponents, strength of schedule, which sections had were stronger than other sections. All that talk went into every single decision that they made today. And as always, I think they did their homework, their due diligence. They came in prepared, and it's a process where people are not going to be happy. That's just the way it is. It's just like during a game yesterday. Every time there's a flag thrown, half the stadium boos and the other half stands up and cheers.
Vince, I always, before I maybe grill you on a couple of these, I always like to ask, was there one classification that was particularly tough to bracket and seed? Out of all, 6 is done already. Out of the 5 other ones, was there one that was particularly tough for the committee to bracket and seed?
Well, probably the one talked the most about was the Aliquippa, Montour, West Allegheny. A lot of discussion went into that classification. That probably went on the longest today, that classification on where the teams should be and how they get there.
Well, Dan, can I go to him? Can I go and ask?
Yeah,
Okay.
No.
Let's ask.
I'm not answering it.
All right, that 4A bracket, I've been getting text messages from coaches, head coaches, assistant coaches. I think the WPIL, puts you right on, come out, be blunt with it, has some explaining to do, a lot of scratching the head. When 3 teams tie for the conference championship, Montour, Aliquippa, and who's there? West Allegheny. So you use your tiebreaker system to go break it, and Aliquippa would have finished first. Mm-hmm. Then our system reverts back to head-to-head, and West A beat Montour last night, finished 2nd seed in that conference, and Montour the 3rd seed. So how in the world does West Allegheny get the number 8 seed behind 2 wild card teams?
2 wild card teams being Montour and, if I can remember without looking down,
Bell Vernon.
Well, once again, it was the full body of work and the strength of schedule. I know that when they discussed Bell Vernon had a pretty tough brackets up there. Thank you. Bell Vernon had a very tough schedule this year. And if you remember, when we put our sectional alignments together, we tried to, in non-conference, the better teams play other better teams. And our teams that struggled a little bit over the last few years, we tried to match them up with teams that they could have some success with. So if you were coming back as a pretty good team and from the prior year, you were getting a pretty tough non-conference schedule. The other teams were not. So that was one of the decisions of your conference. The conference schedule really went into a lot of that. I mean, I know going into last night, without the win, if I can remember, West Allegheny wasn't even a playoff team until they got their win last night. So if they did not win that game,
They would have been third.
they could have not been a playoff team out of that section. So that was discussed among the committee members, and it was hard. We were required to get
eighth.
Well, that's what everyone came to a consensus on. It was eighth. Yeah. So I mean, there's other people.
And Montour seated ahead of Aliquippa,
who they beat.
Yeah, and West Allegheny beat Montour.
But that happens when you have a three-way tie.
Right.
So
and you settled the tie with the tiebreaker points of Aliquippa being number one.
And all three teams are going to get a plaque because all teams are coast section champions.
You know what? They don't really care about that plaque.
I understand that. But that's the process we went by, and they felt that Montour was probably the best team in that classification all year long until that last game. Does one game penalize you from the entire season? Most people felt it does not. They beat Aliquippa. Did that one loss against Aliquippa penalize them from the season? No. Does the one loss that West Allegheny had against Aliquippa penalize them or throw them out of things? No. So all teams beat each other, and so they revert back to strength of schedule, common opponents if there were any, and their play from the beginning to the end of the year.
So you're saying West Allegheny is the eighth basically because of strength of schedule?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
Is
that
that
we
what the
picked that.
committee said?
Yeah,
Is that the reason?
the strength of their schedule throughout the entire year. Yes, and games that they played. We talked about games that they talked about games that teams were in where it was, what was the score of the game? It was 8-6. It was 14-13, and they won the game in the last minute. But yet that common opponent beat them by 30. So those discussions happen also. So on how you do either win or loss in those games goes into those discussions. They have those discussions during the meetings.
Vince Sortino is the Chief Operating Officer of the WPIAL, was in the war room this morning with the selection committee for the 2024 WPIAL playoff field in all 6 classifications, primarily talking right now about the 4A field. Let's quickly, Vince, move along to the 5A field, because there was a lot of folks that felt in the 1 versus 2 seed, Pine Richland versus Upper St. Clair, there was going to be a vigorous debate that was going to be held, and I'm sure there was. Can you take us behind the curtain there? Strength of schedule, unbeaten in that vaunted Allegheny 6 conference for the Upper St. Clair Panthers. And then you've got the Pine Richland Rams, probably the biggest, most quality victory of anybody in the WPIAL, defeating the 1 seed Central Catholic Vikings. So take us through that decision-making process, 1 versus 2 in the 5A field, Pine Richland, Upper St. Clair, if you would.
Once again, the 1-2, as I said earlier, we started our discussion off with that right away, and that went on for a while, and that's what we did. We went back and they went back and forth on the schedule, that the conference, that Upper St. Clair, Bethel Park, Peters Township, hands down, toughest conference there was.
Yeah.
Great teams in that conference, great talent in that conference. That conference was stronger than, in the committee's opinion, the other conferences. At the same time, we looked at the body of work of Pine Richland, and I think that the non-conference win they had against Central Catholic had a lot to do with that 1-2 seeding.
Yeah, and they did take North Allegheny down to the wire. There were a few games
that was also mentioned in the meeting.
Yes. So there's there was an opportunity for 2 of those victories against the 2 top teams in 6A that, again, just slipped through their fingers. So that was a fascinating one. The strength of schedule versus quality win, that is a tough one to reconcile, because you can split that atom so many different ways, and you can, you can come up with the same result going either way.
And I had mentioned, too, to the committee this morning, a lot of people, they make the comment 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. Our goal is to get the best games, the best tournament, and get 1 and 2 to the championship.
Sure. And
that's the goal of the committee. And I reminded the committee today, it is important to the communities. So 1 and 2, even though we're trying to do that, to say that those numbers next to the teams are not important. They are, and they take a lot of pride in that, the teams, the coaches, but our committee also takes a lot of pride in trying to put that together. So we talk about that also.
Well, that's a great point, because there's some
Well, 1 and
validation.
2, it really a lot of times isn't, but it is important sometimes depending on who 4 is. That then comes really
Sure. The bracket itself, and then you're looking at quarterfinal matchups, absolutely. But that's important, and is interesting to hear that insight. That number next to your name, there's a validation of one's work, right? That kind of comes with that. In any event, we do have the 1A brackets that have just.
Can I ask him a question about 5A?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Quick,
Yeah, we do have. Yep.
And I'm not saying this was wrong, but I'd like to know maybe the reasoning behind it. You had the tie for 4th in the Big East Conference between Gateway, Latrobe, Kiski area. Yeah. They all beat each other. They all tied in Gardner points. So you went to tiebreaker points, which is a system you would use.
It would have been different last year.
It would have been different last year. Gateway would have got in.
Correct.
Gateway and the tiebreaker points would have, they finished with the number 4 seed. However, Latrobe, Gateway didn't get the spot. Latrobe did. Why?
They just felt the body work, strength of schedule, and the comparison of teams when they went up and down the chart on games played, that they wanted to give the nod to Latrobe.
All right. 1A bracket, we're going to reveal it live. Vince, do you mind sticking around?
No.
Because I'm sure we have some questions as it pertains to 1A, which we will reveal live here on our KDKA Radio Selection Saturday show. Let's do that when we come back here in just a moment. So do stay with us. The Chief Operating Officer of the WPIAL, Vince Sortino, is with us live in studio, along with Mike White of the Post-Gazette. I'm Dan Zang. Really, this is KDKA Radio WPIAL Selection Saturday, presented by Pennsylvania Western University. And thanks for joining us. The final leg, and we have one more I to dot, one more T to cross before it is official. It is over. 5 of the 6 brackets have been revealed, and there was a delay on the 1A classification because we were awaiting the results of Jeannette and Riverview, and it looks like the Jeannette Jayhawks were able to prevail over Riverview by a 34-20 score. So that has settled everything, and the brackets are hot off the presses, and we will reveal them live in real time. So without any further ado, with Vince Ortino, the WPIL Chief Operating Officer, sitting in with Mike White of the Post-Gazette, just giving you a very quick synopsis of the 1A playoff field, 16 playoff spots. There are no buys awarded, and the wild card bids for at-large are sent in by the selection committee. So here we go, and we will start with the 1A classification. And there was many debates, Mike, that you and I had on our Thursday Quest for the Best shows about who would be the 1 seed. Would it be the defending champion Fort Cherry Rangers, or would it be the Clairton Bears, who have put forth one of the more dominant seasons that is very Clairton-esque from the days of yore as they have returned to form? So let's move on to the bracket to see who the 1 seed is in 1A. And we begin. Without any further ado, Fort Cherry gets it, and the Brentwood Spartans are able to sneak into the postseason. So Fort Cherry is awarded the 1 seed. Mike, your instant reaction.
Well, you knew it was going to be them or Clairton, and I'm interested to hear Vince's points on why they chose Fort Cherry. I don't think you could have gone wrong either way, but Brentwood, I think they got in because they came on a Quest for the Best show Thursday night.
There you have it. So that moves us to the ever-important and much paid attention to 8-9 matchup, and it will be Leechburg and Cornell in the 8-9 game. Mike, your thoughts on this?
Watch Cornell. Their defense is good. They played against Fort Cherry. They played a pretty decent schedule this year. Leechburg, hey, they haven't had much success in the playoffs. That's a great game in the first round.
So their 14-point victory this afternoon earns them the 13 seed. Jeannette will head to Neshannock on Friday at 7 p.m., and I'll tell you what, Neshannock was able to get a big win last night, and that put them in that 4 seed.
I'm going to tell you right now, watch out for Neshannock in the playoffs. They play out there in Lawrence County. People forget about them. They're good. Gino Mazzaga is one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks in Class A. They're good. They can make a lot of noise.
I do wonder if the Jayhawks will have to charter a flight to Lawrence County, and that long sojourn they'll have to make all the way from Westmoreland County. Speaking of Westmoreland County in the 5-12 game, Jeanette's neighbor, Greensburg Central Catholic, the Centurions awarded the 5 seed, and the Greyhounds of Monessen will have to make the trek to take on the Centurions at Greensburg Central Catholic High. I think it's an interesting and very that's a juicy 5-12 matchup.
I'm not saying Monessen shouldn't have been number 12, but I think they're good enough to even be a little higher than that. I wanted to put them higher, but as far as talent, I think they may be a little better than that. But Greensburg Central, big win against Leechburg to get second in that conference. Watch for them.
So if you're looking at a potential upset watch in that 5-12 game as you're filling out your bracket at the office pool, is that something that could be an upset alert or not so much? You feel the Centurions should handle business?
I'll still take Greensburg Central on that one.
Okay, so there's the left side of the bracket. Again, Fort Cherry getting the number 1 seed. We move over to the right side of the bracket. If Fort Cherry is 1, that means Clairton is 2, and they will host the Rochester Rams. Don't know the site with the renovations to Neil Brown Stadium currently underway. Clairton has played at Thomas Jefferson. That facility won't be available. TJ needs to use it after all, so stay tuned for an announcement as to where Clairton will play on Friday, November the 1st at 7 p.m. against the Rochester Rams.
Good to see Rochester get a wild card spot because Eugene Matzook been a long-time great coach. They get in. This could be maybe his last year, maybe, but he gets to maybe end it with Clairton.
There you have it. So California is the number 10 seed as they fall last night to Jefferson Morgan in that bid for a conference champion. So they draw the card of the Laurel Spartans. That 7-10 game is going to be something.
Well, California, extra point away from winning that conference and maybe getting a top 5, 6 seed, maybe.
That's
and they go all the way down to 10.
That's a tough tumble there, and I guess you have really no other choice. Taking a look at the 3-14 matchup, this will be played at Dormont Stadium on Friday. It's Bishop Canavan playing host to the Bentworth Bearcats. What do you have?
Well, Bentworth, hey, they're in the playoffs for the first time since 2015. Bishop Canevin, I like what the WPIL did here. I didn't really know who would be 1 or 2, but I didn't want Bishop Canevin to be on the same side of the bracket as Fort Cherry. They're not. I think they belong on the same side of the bracket as Clairton, and that's what will happen.
Okay, so 314 Bishop Canevin is hosting Bentworth, and the final spot to fill in the 6-11 game, it is Jefferson Morgan with their big win last night. What a year it's been for Jay Morgan and the Rockets. Southside Beaver is their opponent as the 11 seed. Rockets have had a terrific year. It was punctuated last night with their first conference championship in a long, long time outright since, well, Mike, you were a young cub on the beat.
First time undefeated regular season since 1989. I like their quarterback, Houston Guessman. To opponents, it's Houston, we have a problem. And Southside, though, they were in the finals last year, Dan. Jeff Morgan's going to have their hands full, Southside.
All right, so again, let's take a look at the overall bracket here. Again, no buys awarded in 1A, 1 through 16, running it down. Fort Cherry is the 1, Clairton is the 2. The 3 seed goes to the Bishop Canevin Crusaders, with Neshannock getting the 4 seed. Greensburg Central Catholic in the 5-12 game against Monessen. Jefferson Morgan, the 6 seed, against Southside Beaver. And then continuing on, you look at the 7-10 matchup. I think that may be the best matchup of all. Mike, feel free to disagree. Laurel in California will be fantastic for a 7-10. And then the 8-9 game, Leechburg and Cornell, that too will be absolutely must-watch or listen content in the 1A field. And they will play on the very first game of Championship Saturday at Acrisure Stadium in about 3 weeks from today. So, anything stand out? Jump off the page. Does anybody have a grievance to file? The 1 versus 2, we're going to ask Vince Sortino this in a moment, but how do you feel, Mike, about this 1A field at large?
No, I think it's pretty much, when you have a 16-team field, it can go many different ways. But I think, the bracket, not really surprises there.
All right, the 1 versus 2, Fort Cherry and
Vin.
Clairton. Vince, how was that decided, and how much debate was there?
Well, I don't know that we have to talk too much about that because Mike agreed. He thought the bracket was great. So
there you have it.
We should just end the show right now.
Wait,
Mike,
I'm glad you realized that.
But I'm
glad
sure,
you realized
I'm sure Clairton is going to feel they blew through everyone, and
they both had great seasons.
Yep.
And really,
Did you flip a coin?
No, we did not flip a coin. There was discussion going back and forth. Both teams really deserved a 1 seed. You couldn't go wrong with either one of those. A lot of discussion in this classification, once again, as all the classifications on the wild cards, just to make sure that they felt that they got the right teams into the tournament.
Vince Sortino, the Chief Operating Officer of the WPIL, we thank him so very much for his insights and a look behind the scenes as to what went into this field of 65. And it all begins on Friday, November the 1st. KDKA Radio Game of the Week will be the 7-10 game in the 5A field, Moon versus Penn Hills at Penn Hills Stadium. For Mike White of the Post-Gazette, I'm Dan Zangerli. We thank you so very much for tuning us in to Selection Saturday, presented by Pennsylvania Western University, and a thank you to our supporting sponsors, Home Team Collections, Noble Environmental, and Monticello's Pizza. Be sure to stay tuned to KDKARadio.com for all of the brackets and continuing coverage. Follow our social channels. Thanks for joining us. This has been an exclusive presentation by the flagship station of the WPIAL, 100.1 FM and AM 1020 News Radio KDKA.